Hello, and welcome to my first video of my voice in it. Pretty cool, right? Maybe not. Also, yes, get the fact that I'm British out of the way in the comments. I know 50% of my viewers are American, so I can kind of see it coming. But enough of that. Welcome to my multi-part series discussing every single, and I mean every single passive in Voxblade. This is going to be horrible. Anyways, since this is a multi-part series on every Voxblade passive and unique passive, going in depth of how they work, which by the way, the game has, let me check, 229 passives. 229 passives. Why am I doing this to myself? Anywho, since there are 229 passives, I'll be splitting this series up into 10 parts, most likely depending on how long this takes, since I'm going to be going in depth for some of the passives that have interactions with other passives, and how some passives work, such as damage types and defensive types, ranging from everything, since I am explaining all 229. But anyway, let's not waste any more time. Welcome to part 1 of a multi-part series going in depth on every single Voxblade passive. In Voxblade, for defensive stats to even exist, there first of all has to be damaging stats. Defensive stats range all the way from elemental resistance of every kind, even base magic, to temperature resistance, stun resistance, and even just flat damage reduction to both magical and physical. And to start off this list of the defensive stats, we'll first go to the most basic one, being physical defense. Physical defense is one of the easiest stats to understand in Voxblade, being that it gives you percentage damage resistance against physical damage. The colour code for that damage type will be shown on screen now. But let's say if you have 100% damage resistance, you wouldn't take 0 physical damage. It just halves the amount of damage that you would normally take from a physical damage source. Say if you took 32 damage from a Dragagator and you then had 100% physical damage resistance, you would only take 16. Magic defense acts very similarly to physical defense in the way that it gives you a percentage resistance towards the magic damage type. Now that doesn't mean it gives you a resistance against all elements such as air, earth, water, fire, holy and hex. It just gives its own damage resistance effectiveness towards the magic type, which is the blue one shown on screen. I'll be putting each elemental defense type into one section here, since they all work theoretically the same as to magic and physical, in the fact that they give you a percentage defense resistance to that corresponding element that has the type. On screen though will be colour coded each element to the same colour code as in-game, just to clear up any confusion for anybody having it. But theoretically it works the same way, so there shouldn't be any confusion here. Now I'll be talking about another type of resistance being separate from defensive sort of resistance itself, being environmental resistance, both housing heat resistance and cold resistance. Respectively, cold resistance makes you take less damage over time for being in tundra, and the same goes for heat resistance, being that you take less damage over time being in the desert, making it incredibly useful if you're exploring through said locations, or if you're doing quests or just farming enemies in general. I would very recommend you use these sets. and I'll include 2 screenshots of where you can find each set. Now I will be talking about the flat damage resistances, being protection and warding. Protection acts as a flat damage reduction against physical damage rather than a percentage damage reduction, making it less effective when hit by a high damage physical attack, whereas having physical defense percentage would work more effectively as the percentage scaled from it would be a higher number. The same goes for warding, being that it acts as a flat damage value reduction that you take from enemies that use the magic type, although this doesn't work for all elements and it just works for the basic type of magic in the same way as protection. The final stat on the defensive section is called tenacity. Tenacity acts in the same way as protection and warding, as that is a flat value number, meaning the more tenacity you have of that flat value number, you take less stun time when hit by enemies. Moving on to the next part of the video, I'll be talking about the boosting stats such as physical damage boost, magic damage boost, all of the elemental damage boosts, summon damage boost, speed boost, jump boost, basically anything that boosts your stats by just a raw amount. And then next video I'll be talking about the more intricate passives and what they can do in certain builds and such. Physical boost increases the amount of damage of all non-magical physical weapons that scale from the physical damage type. If you want to reference what these damage types do for each weapon, I'll include a screenshot from the Trello of the blade tree which shows which each weapon scales from the physical damage type. But other than that, it scales off a percentage, being that is if you deal 16 damage normally with, let's say for example, the Greatsword Blade, and then you got 100% physical damage boost, you would then deal 32 damage, essentially doubling the amount of damage you deal. Magic boost works effectively the same way as physical boost in that it increases the effectiveness scaling of the magic damage type as a total, being the blue damage type, and the fact that it increases the scaling of magic scaling weapons. Every single weapon from the magic tree strictly scales from magic damage, with some scaling from dexterity as well, which we'll talk about later, and some very few weapons from each of the elemental skill trees also scale off magic, but for that you'll have to reference back to the blade skill tree from the Trello. Elemental boosts work effectively the same way as the magic damage scaling, except it gives damage increases to their respective element path. But there are very few cases where elements tend to cross over, such as the Golden Trident Blade, which increases off water and holy, the Cragstone Hammer, which increases off fire and earth, and then the Sandglaive, which increases off earth and air. But those are just very few cases where elements tend to cross over in the way that they scale, making for some really unique hybrid builds that you sometimes see every now and then. Summon Boost is a stat that people widely misinterpret as only 4 weapons scale from Summon, being the Radiant Hammer, and then the Skull Hammer upgrade tree evolving into the Skull Mace and the Possessed Blade. But from what I've deduced while using my Summoner build, it doesn't really affect the initial damage you deal, but rather it strictly increases the damage that your summons deal, making summon builds a lot more summon focused, meaning that your summons will be taking a lot of the front of the damage, leaving you with not a lot of damage potential yourself, but your summons more. dexterity boost. This is where things start to get a bit messy, where some weapons can scale from dexterity boost along with physical boost or even different elemental damage types, but dexterity initially increases the chance that you can crit on your attacks, but now so having too much dexterity will result in a bit of a loss in some of your damage, because obviously if you have too much dexterity past the point of where you already guarantee a crit, it's a bit of a waste where you could be speccing more into your weapon's damage type itself. But from what I've seen from different builds and videos I've seen people do, normally you are guaranteed to crit past around the 200% mark, so going much higher than that isn't really necessary. But it does increase the scaling of some weapons, which will be on screen so you can have a look for yourself. But other than that, its main purpose is to increase your crit chance. Next up is speed boost and jump boost. Now, they are a very simple concept, so some people might think, why include it in the video? Well, as I said, I am explaining all 229, so here it is. But speed boost, well, it increases your running and walk speed by whatever percentage you have in your stat overhaul. Same with jump boost, it just adds a value to how high you can jump into the air. But there's nothing really else to say. That is just speed and jump boost. It's such a simple concept. Now that covers every stat boost and defensive type boost for the first part of the series. I'd like to thank anyone who stuck around to the end or generally just needed the knowledge, since these are kind of simple things to grasp. Maybe some of them being a bit more complicated, such as magic not going for every type of element and the way dexterity works. But other than that, I don't know when the next parts will be out since I have college work and stuff to catch up with, but thanks for sticking around to the end of the video if you're listening to this. Like and subscribe please. Yeah, the statistics are pretty miserable. But other than that, if you enjoyed the video or if you have any questions, drop a like, leave a comment. I'll probably get round to it at some point like my other videos, but hope you have a nice day. See ya.